the money.
Hey, it's me. Knock, knock. So, you got my money?
Think about it. You're dealing with numbers all day long. Decimal points, high frequencies, bang, bang, bang. Digits, all very acidic, above the shoulders mustard shit. Right? Kind of gonna wake some people out. Right? You gotta feed the geese to keep the blood flowing. I keep the rhythm below the belt.
I want to stay in Arizona. I want my new contract. Show me the money! Jerry, you better yell! Show me the money!
Where's my money? You gonna give me my money? Where's my money, man?
Welcome back to Cap Strapped. I'm Max Dean, and you can find me on Twitter at PanAmFootball. Today we are looking at the Indianapolis Colts salary cap as part of the Divisional Deep Dive series. We're going to be looking at quite a few different analytics, including positional investment. We're also going to look at dead money. We're going to look at not cash to cap, but cap to APY, kind of get an idea of what teams are doing as far as paying guys up front on the cap or pushing things down the line, and a couple of different interesting contracts as well for each team. So let's kick it off. We've got a lot to talk about, and I'm excited. This is one of my favorite things to do here at Pan Am Football, and if you like salary cap stuff too and you like the video, throw a like my way. It does help me out a lot. And subscribe, because we're going to be doing salary cap analytics for every single team in the NFL over the next few weeks. Okay, let's do it. So here, first of all, you're going to see a few different things. Firstly, you're going to see the top 51 cap hits for the Colts. I also, in my projection, I included all 2021 draft picks. So technically, there are a few players with higher cap hits this year than like Kylan Granson going down to Will Fries at the bottom there. But I like to include them just because it's usually not unheard of, but pretty unlikely for a team to cut draft picks from that very year. It happens, but it's usually not the case. You'll also be able to see the average per year in terms of salary directly compared. So right up top, easy example, Carson Wentz has a $20.4 million cap hit for the Colts this year, but his contract is worth $32 million per year, so you can see what the differentials are for all of their players. You can also see any interesting notes. So I have none in this case for the Colts, but I have franchise tag players noted, I have fifth-year option players noted, and I have any player who is still under the rookie contract for the team that drafted them. So that would be the Colts. You got Quentin Nelson there, first-round pick in 2018, Darius Leonard, second-round pick in 2018, and so on and so forth. Then on the right, you have the offensive and defensive investment breakdowns. And special teams is in the very back of defense there. So now let's talk a little bit about the Colts and what we're looking at here. First things first, you can see they have a lot of their own draft picks still in their top 51 players. There's a few more that didn't make it into the top 51 that would be draft picks from previous years, but this is what you're looking at. So you got a ton of second-round picks. I mean, just going down the list, you've got Darius Leonard, Braden Smith, Rock Ya-Sin, Michael Pittman Jr., Jonathan Taylor, Kamoko Toure, Ben Banogu, Tyquan Lewis, Paris Campbell, Deo Odeyingbo. All those guys are second-round picks, and look how inexpensive they are, both in terms of upfront cap hit and average per year. I mean, these guys are all making, for the most part, around $1.5 million, and the only one or two that are kind of up there are Michael Pittman Jr. and Jonathan Taylor, and you look at that and you're like, they're still under $2 million per year. I mean, these are high-quality players. So I've talked before about how the Indianapolis Colts run what I call a Moneyball style front office, and you can see it here. So as you go up, you're finding inexpensive, scheme fit veterans, whether it be Jack Doyle, Mo Alley Cox, a few different guys that kind of fill that role that are not superstars. You've got, Zach Pascal. You've got like Xavier Rhodes, Eric Fisher, all guys who are not making a ton of money for various reasons, who all in reality should make a lot more just based on the position they play and the impact that they have. But for various reasons, they're just not valued that highly in the league. So the Colts scoop them up. And then they've got all these second and third round picks, right? So like I said, you got this whole chunk of guys right in the middle of the roster that are all second and third round picks. And then looking over at the breakdown here, you can see that they're substantially invested at interior offensive line. You've got Quentin Nelson as the big one in terms of, well, I guess he's the best one. But you've also got Ryan Kelly, who plays center, and he adds to that as well. So between those two, they've got a solid interior investment just right then and there. Tackle, not as much, because Eric Fisher is inexpensive, and he's the slated left tackle, while Braden Smith is the projected right tackle. He has been for a couple of years, and he's still under his rookie contract from the second round. At quarterback, you've got Carson Wentz with only a $20.4 million cap hit, but a $32 million average per year. And the reason they're able to get that is because so much of his signing bonus went back with the Philadelphia Eagles. So his cap hit will go up a little bit in the next couple of years, but that's basically a big discount, assuming he can get back to being a decent quarterback. Because even if he's not awesome, if he's just okay, that's still a discount. I mean, you've got guys making $25 million per year who are, middle of the road at this point. The other thing is I like to look at the top and the bottom. You've got a few guys here who are making over $10 million a year, but not many. Carson Wentz, his average is 32, but again, the Colts actually pay him less in average. DeForest Buckner, you got 21. You got Ryan Kelly and Grover Stewart, both making over 10. Aside from that, everyone else is under 10. And for the most part, the average per year drops to under 5 pretty early in the list here. And then down at the bottom, your cap hits are dropping down into the 900,000s before you get to the top 51 cutoff. So you'll see, comparatively to a few other teams that I'm doing, some go even lower because they're more top heavy. Some cut off over $1 million just because of the way that they structure their team. So it's an interesting comparison. So here's another interesting statistic. You have cap usage for this year versus total average per year from all the players on their roster. So if you were to take all the players and their average salary per year and total it all up, you get $183.5 million approximately. While if you look at salary cap hits and you total them all up for the top 51, it's $172.4 million. Now, it's not a very big differential at all. It's around $11 million approximately. The bulk of the difference for the Colts comes from the fact that Carson Wentz has a $20.4 million cap hit, while he actually has a $32 million average per year. There are a number of different ways that you can develop a large differential here. The first one is the way that the Colts have done it, by trading for a player who will have a lower cap hit for them and leaving a bunch of dead money with the previous team. You can also do it by restructuring contracts and turning salary into proration, which pushes money into the future and will likely result in dead money. You also can do it by having contracts that are backloaded and pay more at the back than in the front. Now, the difference between backloaded in terms of paying more in the back than in the front is that the player actually doesn't get the money until later. while the restructure or large signing bonus means the player gets the money up front. It's just the cap hit is later. So those are really the three ways that you're going to see teams do it. And the only one that doesn't actually, come calling later on the salary cap is the way that the Colts have done it here. And they're known for having a pretty close cash to cap ratio, which is a little different than what I have here. But the measurables are similar, and I think they tell a similar story. And then dead cap. Dead cap is only $255,000 this year. I haven't looked at every single team's cap yet, because one of the things is that if I do them all up front, I'll invariably be changing a bunch of them just because teams make signings and stuff. So I have to kind of do it a little bit closer to when I make these videos. But as far as I can tell, this is probably the smallest dead cap in the entire league. They really don't like to push money to the future. Bucks used to be like that. Not the case this year. But we'll talk about them when we get to them. So again, comparatively, the Colts really like to be aware of the future and not go all in right now. They could mess with that a little bit if they're confident in their quarterback situation in the coming years, because if Carson Wentz does play well, it's a steal. And again, if he doesn't play well, they, would be wise not to go crazy with signings leading up to that. So here's just a simple chart that lays out the investment on offense versus defense versus special teams versus dead cap. The dead cap is so small that there's a red sliver you can't even see. And they're clearly substantially more cap invested on offense. Defense, they've made a ton of draft picks. So they've got all these second round picks that haven't gotten second contracts yet. Like, you've got even the most recent ones like Kwity Paye, Deo Odeyingbo, Taekwon Lewis, Kamoko Toure, Ben Banogu, Bobby Okereke, Darius Leonard. You've got all of these guys who are not making much money because they're draft picks. Then you throw in there the fact that you've got Xavier Rhodes on such an inexpensive contract. You can see how by making large draft investments, they've kept their defensive spending lower. And then offensively, they do have some more expensive players, between Ryan Kelly and Carson Wentz and, I would say T.Y. Hilton is not quite as expensive as he once was, but you got him as well. So when you add all of this up, there's a clear favoring of the offense. I've seen a fair amount of this so far. A lot of teams have invested more draft picks defensively, but end up spending more on the salary cap on offense. I think that probably some of that comes down to that, I've heard statistics, and I probably should be able to quote them a little bit better, but I've heard statistics that say consistent offense is more correlated to success, because basically everything is timing based. So the better players that you have that play together longer will generally do that better. Whereas defense, you don't want to be super predictable. And so changing over players relatively consistently is more helpful. And the only thing that you really, want to say like, this is something we want consistently is pass rush. And I think that you could probably see that here in the Colts as well. So this graphic has a couple of charts that compare the makeup of the roster with cap number and APY. And the basic idea is if you have a player with a $30+ million cap hit, they will create a wedge in the cap number chart, and same with APY. So Carson Wentz, he has a $30 million plus APY, but only a $20 million cap number. So you can see here there's no blue wedge under the cap number, but there is a small blue wedge in APY. The idea of this is that they are tiered salaries, so it basically tells you what you've invested on your team. Now, these are just tiers that I've basically made up, but I do think that they make a lot of sense. Now, basically the idea is 30+ million, those are franchise quarterbacks. 20 to 29.9 million, those are elite players at premium positions. So edge rusher, defensive tackle, offensive tackle, wide receiver, cornerback. Then $10 million to 19.9 would be elite players for non-premium positions, so guard, center, running back, tight end, linebacker, safety. You'd also have just high-quality players at premium positions, so the next tier down for those guys. Then 5 to 9.9 million, those you're getting quality starters, like high-quality veterans and very high draft picks, high first-round picks. Then the 2 to 4.9, you're looking at like just decent vets versus late first-round picks. And then the minimum guys, you have a pretty broad spectrum, so anything below 1.9 million. And so that would be just tons of veteran minimum guys and basically all draft picks second round or later. So you can see the Colts are not ultra invested in the top tier of their roster. And ultimately, this allows them to have a lot more solid players. And by taking more picks in the draft, you're getting that 59% in APY that's in minimum to be drafted players in that range than veteran minimum guys who are, bumping from roster to roster in that range. So next up, we're just going to talk about a couple of contracts that I find interesting on the Colts for various reasons. First off, Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz was traded for this offseason, which means all of his prorated bonus was left with the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, he earned that money, but its salary cap effect remains with them. Any potential dead money only comes from guaranteed salary and roster bonus. So right now, Carson Wentz has guarantees for his 2021 base salary, 2021 roster bonus, and 2022 base salary. That's why his potential dead money would be $42.4 million. It's extremely unlikely he would be released before this season, so you don't really need to worry about that. And so his cap hit for the year is $20.4 million. If he were to not play well and be released prior to next season, I would say it's relatively unlikely. But if it were the case, the Colts would be on the hook for the $22 million base salary, which is what that dead money would be. If he stays on the roster, he will have a $27 million cap hit. After that, he's not guaranteed anything, so the Colts could release him free and clear if necessary. Now, Carson Wentz is the number 1 ranked APY player on the Colts and the number 8 overall APY ranked quarterback in the NFL. Basically, that just means he has the highest annual salary on the Colts and the 8th highest quarterback annual salary in the league. And the interesting thing here is because the Colts traded for him with so much money already paid to him by the Eagles, he has a $32 million APY in terms of the entire contract, but the Colts are only on the hook for $25.6 million in terms of APY. So that is basically a $6.5 million per year discount that they're getting him at. So it's a risk in terms of giving up the draft pick and, kind of seeing how it works out. But if it does work out, that's at least a couple of years of very inexpensive quarterback play. So we'll see how that plays out. But that could be a big win for them. It is risky, but again, for a quarterback, it's kind of worth it if you feel like you're in, purgatory at the middle of the draft and you can't really get a rookie. So next I want to talk about Darius Leonard, the linebacker. He has 1 year left on his rookie contract. He's eligible for an extension this year, and there's a good chance they'll give it to him. They could let him play out this salary and use the franchise tag on him, and while it's normally pretty unusual for a linebacker to get a franchise tag, I could see them doing it in this case because he's so good. The reason it's unusual is because the edge rusher version of a 3-4 outside linebacker also is used in the linebacker equation, which doesn't really make sense, but it is the way that it is. But that also makes the number spike up, and so often it's too expensive for a traditional off-ball linebacker, but Darius Leonard is incredible. So there's a good chance that they'll use it on him if it gets to that point. In fact, I would say it's almost a guarantee. But it's more likely that they will give him a contract extension at some point this offseason, so coming up in the summer. So as of right now, he is the 24th most highly paid player on his own team, so 24 in APY, and he's the 54th ranked linebacker in terms of payment. And again, that's the kind of discount you're getting when you draft a good player in the second round. Like, that's such a discount. His cap hit this year is a little bit higher than what you'll see as APY. And the reason for that is because he's hit a bunch of incentives. Even rookie contracts do have incentives for, all pros and Pro Bowls and a bunch of things like that. So it did spike his salary up a little bit. And that doesn't show up on the actual APY, but it's still a pretty substantial discount. And it's not a big cap hit by any stretch of the imagination. So my guess is that he'll come in somewhere around $18 million per year, around the Bobby Wagner number. The thing is, the Colts do, like I said, play that money ball. Now, the way that you can do this so that you're not paying so much annually is the size of the jump versus what he makes this year versus what he makes in the future is so large that if you give him a contract extension now and just put a good chunk of that money in 2021, you'll bump up his cap hit now, but your average will still be way lower. So let's say you wanted to go, just for argument's sake, $18 million per year. So 18 times 4 would be a $72 million contract. Well, then just throw in the fact that he has the $4.28 million cap hit right now. So you're totaling 76.28. Then you divide that by the 5 years. And you have him under contract for $15.256 million for the next 5 years. So essentially what you're doing is, you're using the benefit of extending versus signing a free agent contract. The contract number will still be negotiated around the 4 years in the future, but you can start the cap hits now. Because he's such a discount as it is, you give up a little bit of the 2021 discount to get a greater discount in the next coming 4 years. So that's what I would do with him. You could do a 5-year contract, or you could do whatever you wanted, really. But, that's basically the idea. And it works less and less with the more well-paid the player is currently. But because he's such a discount, again, you're giving up some of that 2021 discount when you're not worried about it, when you have the cap space to use. And then in the future, you don't have to worry about it because you're not so highly invested at an inside linebacker, or off-ball linebacker, I should say. So the last one here I'm going to talk about is Quentin Nelson. He is also in the final year of his rookie contract, drafted the same year as Darius Leonard. However, as a first-round player, he was eligible for the 5th-year option. That means that his cap hit in 2021, the $7.77 million there, that is the final year, but then that $13.754 million cap hit, that is the 5th-year option being used on him. So they've already activated that, which means he's under contract for 2 more years now. Now, you could do the same thing that I spoke about with Darius Leonard here. To get a maximum future discount, you could start the extension now, increase the 2021 and 2022 cap hits a little bit to bring down that average that you're going to have to pay on the cap for the next however many years you extend him for. The reason is, I wouldn't normally say this for other guards, but because he is the clear and obvious best guard in the NFL, he's going to set the record for a new contract extension whenever that happens. Joe Thuney just did it this year with the Chiefs as a free agent, around $16 million per year. So I would guess that, at minimum, you're looking at 16.5, probably more like the $17 million range. which is fine. The cap will continue to go up and salary growth will continue to go up. That's not an issue. But if you want to basically maximize your salary cap situation, what I would do, and I think there's a good chance they'll do this, is extend him this year and bring the average cap hits down a bit. As it stands, he is the 9th in APY for the Colts and the 17th most well-compensated guard. That would jump a little bit because that doesn't include, again, the 5th-year option, but best guard in the NFL paid like the 17th best guard in the NFL. That's the advantage of draft picks. Like, I cannot stress that enough. It's just really, really tremendous value. So that's it for the Colts today. Let me know if you liked what we did here. We're doing it for every single team. And so if you're curious about certain things that I didn't mention with the Colts, you can just comment or contact me on Twitter. I have definitely been a bit more active on Twitter. And then if you have things that you want me to include for the other teams that I haven't done yet, let me know so that I can include it into the video. Okay? I appreciate all of the support, guys. And like I said, we will be doing this for every single NFL team. So subscribe and stay tuned.